we must impeach Trump because Russia, well, no, that ended up being a hoax. Ukraine, yes, Ukraine. In the newest string of nonsensical left-wing logic, we must get Trump on the Ukraine. Now, this shows that they really have no faith in the American people understanding geopolitics, that they're going to just try and transition from Russia to Ukraine, right? He's a Russian stooge. We're going to get him for being a Russian stooge. Now we're going to get him for making deals with the Ukrainians, who are currently trying to fight against the Russians. So this all gets a little convoluted, but, you know, politics in the age of Trump is a little convoluted. All right. Here is the case that the Democrats are making for impeachment. There is a call between Donald Trump and Vladimir Zelensky, the new president of the Ukraine, where they're claiming that Trump did a sort of quid pro quo for the Ukrainians to release military aid. Now, okay, so here's what it is. Russia invaded Crimea. If you remember, Barack Obama was caught on a hot mic saying, I promise you more flexibility if I get reelected, because it's my last election. There'll be more flexibility. He said this to Dmitry Medvedev. He says, great, I will transmit this information to Vladimir. So after Obama gets elected second term, Russia annexes Crimea in the Ukraine and starts proxy wars and starts violence in the Ukraine. This is bad. Okay, so there's where we are. Now, Trump campaigned on some quasi-pro-Russian, anti-Russian. He campaigned on pretty much everything. It was a Rorschach plot test on pretty much everything. But Trump in policy has actually been pretty hard on the Russians, right? Arming Ukrainian rebels, or arming the Ukrainian government to fight the Russian rebels. Sorry, he's been pretty strict on Iran, which is a staunch Russian ally and puppet state at this point, right? He bombed Russian mercenaries in Syria. So this was Trump and Russia, Ukraine. Now, the allegation they're going to make here is Trump withheld $400 million of American taxpayer money that was going to go as military aid to the Ukraine to help confront Russian aggression. All right. So the allegation, and this would be an impeachable offense, is Trump withheld the money from the Ukraine, and he made it clear that it was a quid pro quo here. In order for Ukraine to get the money that they had been promised, they would have to launch an investigation into Joe Biden and his son Hunter Biden. Okay, now let's back up a bit, because this is where the story gets really convoluted. Or this is where it gets actually get really clear. Hunter Biden is Joe Biden's son. He was kicked out of the military for, I think it was cocaine use. He's not really qualified to do much, but he's been getting jobs because of his father for a long time. One of the jobs that Hunter Biden just managed to, daddy himself into is he was on the board of a major natural gas company in the Ukraine. What is his qualifications for this? Zero. His qualifications are literally, my daddy is Joe Biden. So he was on the board of this specific organization. Now, this organization, considering that Hunter Biden on their board, was being investigated for corruption. Now, the prosecutor investigating them, this is Joe Biden's claim, not the most ethical prosecutor ever. He was himself in some alleged corruption scandals. Now, quick caveat here, it's Eastern Europe. It's the Ukraine. Almost every prosecutor or politician in the last 10 years is probably, you could look at them and go, meh. So, okay, there's the defense of Joe Biden. Okay, now here's where we get into it. Joe Biden, and we're going to go over this. Joe Biden threatened to withhold $1 billion in loan promises to the Ukraine unless they got rid of this prosecutor and dropped the investigation into the company that his son was on the board of. All right. So this is what Trump wanted investigated. Now, I will say, it is a crime and it is an impeachable offense if Donald Trump says you're not getting $400 million in military aid unless you investigate one of my political opponents. You cannot use taxpayer money for your own personal or partisan gain. That does violate the oath of office here. Now, the problem is, this is pretty much exactly what Joe Biden said he did. Now, NBC, CBC, all the major news outlets I've been watching last week are saying Trump is saying that Joe Biden withheld $1 billion from the Ukrainians, and there's no evidence of this. Trump is making things up again. There's no evidence of Joe Biden doing anything like this. Trump is crazy. Republicans are crazy. People who follow Trump are crazy and stupid, and Trump is stupid. There is zero evidence. Trump is making things up. Roll the evidence, please.
Mr. Vice President, how many times have you ever spoken to your son about his overseas business dealings?
I've never spoken to my son about his overseas business dealings. I went over, I guess, the 12th, 13th time to Kyiv. Why is he on the phone with a foreign leader, trying to intimidate a foreign leader? And I had gotten a commitment from Poroshenko and from Yatsenyuk that they would take action against the state prosecutor, and they didn't. You should be asking him the question. I said, no, I said, I'm not going to, or we're not going to give you the $1 billion. They said, you have no authority. You're not the president. The president said. I said, call him. This appears to be an overwhelming abuse of power. I said, I'm telling you, you're not getting $1 billion. Trying to intimidate a foreign leader. I looked, I said, I'm leaving in 6 hours. If the prosecutor's not fired, you're not getting the money. Oh, son of a bitch. Got fired. And everybody's looked at it and said there's nothing there. Ask the right question.
The prosecutor's not fired, you're not getting the money. Okay, now let's deconstruct this from a metaphase here. Okay. You can threaten to withhold aid to a country for purposes that benefit your own country. So let's say military aid's going to the Ukraine, but Ukraine is doing deals with Botswana. And I'm making this up, by the way. And let's just say Botswana is laundering money on behalf of the mullahs in Iran. And Ukraine, currently empowering Botswani rebels, is making things harder for the Americans. And the Americans could say, Trump could say, or Biden could say, or Obama could say, hey, you were promised this money from our country, and we're not giving you this money we promised you unless you get rid of these Botswanan rebels. Now, again, I'm making that up about Botswana, but that's a perfectly legitimate use of political power and taxpayer money, right? That's for the good of the American people. You are allowed to do that. Now, the case that Trump and Biden are going to be making here is Biden didn't specifically say, I did this to save my son Hunter, although it's heavily implied. The case Biden can be making, and it is a decent case to make, is that I threatened to withhold the payments because of the corruption in the Ukraine. You could say, because we weren't going to throw American money into a system that would enable corruption, because if we throw money into a corrupt system, it's not good for us long term. That is a viable excuse. Now, the problem is, considering Trump and Biden did the exact same thing, right? If you're going to say, yeah, that makes sense for Joe Biden, yes, Joe Biden was withholding money from the Ukrainians because there was heavy corruption in the Ukrainian system, well, then Trump can make the exact same case. Because in the transcripts released today, you did see, now the person who brought the military aid was Zelensky, not Trump. So it wasn't like Trump had some master plan. Trump's just on the phone and talking out of his ass like he usually does. And it is it is Zelensky who brings up, okay, what about this military aid? And he says, well, you're not really doing stuff for us. How do we know if you get this aid? So Trump can make the case. There are a lot of different reasons cases you can make for why Trump withheld the aid. Now, the Democrats are going to say Trump withheld the $400 million because he wanted an investigation into Joe Biden. You could very easily make the case that he didn't want to, that he had held up the money beforehand because he had corruption concerns. Now, if you're going to say Joe Biden is innocent because he was not doing this for his son, he was doing it because there are corruption concerns in the Ukraine, you have then stated unequivocally that there are corruption concerns in the Ukraine, and Donald Trump has legitimate reasoning to withhold $400 million to them. I.e., this isn't an impeachable quid pro quo thing. Now, the Democrats have already backed off this already. Yesterday they were we're going to prove quid pro quo. Quid pro quo is going to be what gets them. Well, now they're saying we don't even need quid pro quo. We don't even need quid pro quo. Okay. As again, the fundamental accusation is Donald Trump withheld $400 million in promised aid in exchange for an investigation into his political opponent. There are two major flaws here. One, before this transcript and this story became public, the $400 million was released to the Ukraine. Two, the Ukraine has stated that there is no investigation going on into Joe Biden right now. So again, it's going to be very hard to prove collusion for a crime that was not committed. Right? How can you obstruct justice on a crime that wasn't committed or collude to commit a crime that was never committed? It's going to be very, very hard to prove, but they're going to prove it anyway because Nancy Pelosi's gung-ho. All right, and this is where media lying comes in, and it's a completely different universe on CNN and CBC. Again, because you're hearing the claim on CBC that there is no evidence to say that Joe Biden withheld $1 billion from the Ukraine in order to drop an investigation into a company his son was on the board of. I just showed it to you. And CBC can see it too, and so can CNN and all those. So, okay. Ultimately, what this is, though, is you're going to see them shifting the goalposts here so far that it's going to become, well, you know, he says lots of bad things, and he's racist, and he's this, and he's this, and this, so we're going to impeach him anyway. The impeachment standard they're going to set here, and it's going to fail in the Senate, and everyone knows this. The impeachment standard they're going to set here is basically, I don't like him, and that's impeachable. So the threshold for the Senate Republicans is, to impeach Donald Trump is, if I vote to impeach Donald Trump, will this benefit me within the Republican Party and Republican voters? Will it benefit me independents? Will I be seen as doing the right thing? And there are cases, right? If Donald Trump was on a hot mic saying, you know what, I'm going to help the Taliban invade America for Sharia law, and then I'm going to, you know, rape all these kids, and then I'm going to, you know, murder these people, and by the way, yes, I am the Unabomber. Then yes, the Republicans would say, okay, I need to impeach him because, you know, all the evidence is out there. But are Republicans and independents really going to vote for impeachment on the grounds of what looks like now, I don't like him? And it's a very dangerous precedent to set, right? If your approval rating gets below a certain amount, can we just impeach? Right? What if the next, like, think like 10 years in advance, Democrats. What if there's a next Democratic president is out there? Let's say there's President AOC and Vice President, you know, socialism or whatever, you know? AOC Linda Sarsour, you know, the Red Green Alliance. It's there. It's President AOC. She's governing the place. She's playing with her squeaky toys. Whatever. It's great. Socialist paradise. But you know, within the first 2 years, she wrecks the entire economy, and she's a complete idiot. That you have the Senate and the House. They flip to the Republicans to keep checks on her. Now, she hasn't done anything illegal. Stupid, yes, but illegal, no. Can they just impeach her on the grounds that we don't like AOC? We just think she's an idiot. Right? Because you set those grounds up, you're gonna get, this is how to tear a country apart 101 is this impeachment hearing. This is even stupider than they tried to impeach Bill Clinton for lying about a blowjob. Right? At least he was like, both of those are massively idiotic. But this has zero, this is so hard to prove. Now, maybe it will come out. Maybe that Donald Trump was dead set on forcing the Ukrainians' hand into starting an investigation. That never ended up happening. And it was only people within the administration and the intelligence community that had forced him to open up the aid, right? And maybe we'll find evidence of this. And that's really the only impeachable grounds you're going to find. And the odds that you're going to find that evidence are slim. So Trump has released his transcript. He said he's going to release the whistleblower complaint. So they're not going to be able to get him on the cover-up of the crime that he didn't commit, right? They're not going to be able to hit that angle. So really what the angle they're going to be left with is, we just, impeach first, ask questions later, is what this is going to be. And to their dismay, all this is going to do is galvanize Republican voters and independent voters to saying, listen, I don't like this nonsense, so I'm going to make sure that I vote in the House and the Senate as a sort of presidential vote. All you're doing is galvanizing Republicans to vote down ticket here. That's really what this impeachment hearing is going to be about. I would be shocked, absolutely shocked, if they turn up anything that isn't already what we stated here. And the only way they can get Trump here is they have to sacrifice both Joe Biden and Hillary Clinton. Because, right, the whole Joe Biden thing is a big problem for them. Joe Biden did the exact same thing and then bragged about it. Right? So you have to say, no, Joe Biden needs to go to jail. And what he said is illegitimate. Right? So you can't make the excuse that, it was corruption. Right? You're going to have to say, no, Joe Biden, the Democrats are going to have to lobby for an investigation into Joe Biden. And if you lobby for an investigation into Joe Biden on this grounds, then you're going to run in the crosswires of, well, Trump, how can we say what Joe Biden did was illegal and needs an investigation, and then we're going to impeach Trump for wanting an investigation to Joe Biden? You're going to run to that crossroads there. They're also going to have to get impeach Hillary Clinton, because Hillary Clinton, we have records of her cooperating in 2016 with the Ukrainian consulate to get dirt on Paul Manafort, who was Trump's campaign manager. So any way you slice this, right, if you want any of these sparse cases, if you want them to stick against Trump, you can't have Hillary and Joe Biden out there with way more evidence against them of malfeasance of what you've said is now an impeachable offense. You'd have to sacrifice them both. You'd have to the Democrats would themselves have to open up criminal investigations into both Joe Biden and Hillary Clinton. And even if they do that, the investigation into Joe Biden just validates Trump's initial concerns in the first place. So good luck getting this one past the American people. Yes, the left wing in the states wanted to impeach Trump on day one. And that's kind of the problem here. But independents are about 70-30 in favor of not impeaching. It's about 70% of independents said, no, I don't want to see an impeachment. Have fun shooting yourselves in your own foot, Democrats.